Welcome back to Melody Guitar Book 2. This book focuses on learning how to read and play melodies in standard music notation. You can watch all these videos for free, but it's going to be a lot easier to learn if you have your own copy of Melody Guitar 2 that you can read from and write in. Plus, you can support a music teacher, so I'll leave a link in the description. We're on pages 74 and 75. We're going to talk about half steps, whole steps, and major scales. An interval is the distance in pitch, or high and low, between two notes. You already know one interval, a fairly wide interval actually, your octave. So when you play from a C to a C, you're playing an octave, or 8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now the smallest interval, at least in most Western music, is the half step, and the half step is pretty easy to find on guitar. It's just the next fret. So in this diagram we have a series of half steps, 1, 2, 3. All those notes are a half step apart. And if you want to play a half step higher than an open string is no frets, the half step would be first fret. So there's a half step there between your E and your F. Now if a half step is 1 fret's distance, a whole step is going to be 2 frets distance. So in this diagram, we're looking at a series of whole steps. From the open string to the second fret is a whole step because that's 2 frets. So 0 and then 1, 2. And then from there, all these other notes are whole steps away from each other. When you play a C major scale, or any major scale, you're playing a regular series of whole steps and half steps. That's a little harder to see on the guitar when you're moving from string to string, but we'll be talking about finding whole steps and half steps at a later date. But whatever note you start with, every single major scale has the same whole step and half step pattern. That's going to be whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. While it's a little harder to see those whole steps and half steps moving across strings, it's pretty easy to see them when they're on one string. So check out this diagram. What we have here is a series of whole steps and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And we're starting on this first fret of the first string, making this an F major scale. Now when you count your whole steps and half steps, don't start counting right away. Your first note is just your starting point. And then after that, then you start counting whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So again, starting point, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And you can do this starting on any single note. And as a matter of fact, that's what I'd like you to do. Add some random single string major scales into your warm-up. So for example, you could start on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. That'll be an A. This would be an A major scale. So there's your starting point. And then start counting whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and half. And let's do one more. Let's do the 4th string, 3rd fret. This would just be another F major scale, just starting an octave lower than that F. So there's your starting point. And then start counting whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and half. With single string major scales, this is what your warm-up should look like at this point. We have the Chromatic Scale from page 52, and I'm just going to play these really quick. We have the E minor pentatonic from the end of Melody Guitar 1. We We have the movable minor pentatonic scale that you learned on page 26 in this book. When you practice this scale, make sure you play at least 3 times, low, medium, and high, and name your starting note. I'll just do this once on an A on the 5th fret. And then play your C major scale that you learned on page 27. Make sure you start on the low C and extend it to the highest note you've learned so far, at least to read. That'll be the A at the 5th fret of the 1st string, and then to the lowest note you've learned to read and play so far, which is the low E, and then return back to your starting note. There's our A, and then we go back down. There's our starting note, but go lower than that to our low E, and then return back to the C. And then play some random single string major scales the way I showed you a little earlier in this lesson. Your assignment is to add those single string major scales to your warm-up. So pick random notes and play that whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half step pattern. And don't forget to order your own copy of Melody Guitar Book 2. You can watch all these videos for free, but it's going to be a lot easier to learn with your own book that you can read from and write in, so I'll leave a link in the description. Once you understand these couple pages, go ahead and move right on to page 76. We're going to be talking about sharps and naturals.